Hi Andrew, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So I'll just introduce myself first. Hi, I'm Russell Lutchman. I'm happy to be interviewing Andrew Gray, who is a very interesting man. If you go into Tesco and you push a trolley, you will not know Andrew had something to do with those trolleys. He's an inventor. So Andrew, one of the things I got me interested in you is, of course, your line of work and the way you live and the person you are. So I wonder if you could tell us some things about that.
So, my lifestyle choice and work, I don't consider anything to be work, and I don't consider anything to be leisure exactly. I just consider everything to be life. And I didn't want to have to go to work for anybody else in my early 20s. And having been the laziest schoolboy on the face of the earth, and didn't have any qualifications that were going to do anything very useful for me, I decided I would try and develop intellectual property. And my English wasn't good enough to write, I wasn't musical, and I was too short and ugly to act. So I thought, I'm simply going to have to invent something, and then I can live off the royalties and not have to go to work every day. But to do that, you do have to have a outstandingly sort of fearless view of the world, because what I do is incredibly high risk. It's about 700 to 1 against in success terms. So every day I get up, I think, oh, that's a good idea. It might be a good idea, but it's still 700 to 1 against. And so having navigated this very high risk environment for the best part of 40 years now, I think it's given me a certain fearlessness on how I approach almost everything else.
And what exactly is it that is so high risk that you do?
So, I think every inventor, anybody in this area, should really understand the meaning of fail fast, fail cheap. And of course you don't want to fail, but the odds is that you will fail. So you've got to invest the right amount of effort without falling too much in love with whatever it is, in order to try and make a success, but don't get too attached to anything because it is likely to fail. And then actually you could apply that to relationships and a whole load of other stuff. You commit passionately to whatever it is, but you don't overcommit to a point of not being realistic. So I think the key detail is to be realistic. And having had some success in intellectual property patents for products that worked and really gave me a comfortable lifestyle and enabled me to travel the 5 continents, 5 commercial ones anyway, I really love what I do, but I do accept that it's very risky. So it is just the risk of losing everything if you overcommit to an idea that's not going anywhere.
I see. And how long have you been doing all this?
I started venture when I think I was 24.
Right.
So I'd grown up, left school at 17, did a 3-year course at Loughborough in garage management, because that was the family firm. And then about 2 years after starting work, for reasons I won't bore you with, but everything went south really, really quickly. And all of a sudden, I didn't have a garage to run, I didn't have anything to inherit, and I hadn't really done anything valuable or worky. So all of a sudden, I was faced with, some problems to solve.
So is it fair to say that you've been self-employed probably all of your life?
Yeah, I mean, within that context, I've been self-employed all of my life, bar, tiny
Right.
amount.
And in a sense, you don't really know firsthand what employment is about.
I suppose not. I mean, obviously, I have worked as a consultant with and for other businesses. So, and within the shopping trolley anti-theft system that was quite commercially successful, obviously you had to work and liaise at quite a high level with the buyers at Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, and various quite big firms and distributorships overseas. So you have to put a collar and tie on and understand the right compromise. But in terms of Andrew, you've got to do this today, followed by Andrew, you've got to do that today, no. That has definitely been a choice I have opted away from.
That's an interesting point, because a lot of people, as you probably have friends who are employed,
Yeah.
and a lot of them need the discipline of employment. And how do you keep your discipline?
That is a great point. I think it is there's always a point to prove. So initially when I started inventing things, I think, let's say it's 4 or 5 years before I actually started to make a living, maybe even longer than that. And so let's say you're with friends, or you go to a drinks party and people say, oh, what do you do? And of course you say, oh, well, I'm trying to invent things. Oh, good, well, what have you invented? Have you ever been on Dragon's Den? Da, 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 da. And of course you don't have very many intelligent answers for all. You know, it just sounds like you're a fantasy hobbyist, with no purpose or meaning. And they say, oh, really? And immediately go and find somebody else to talk to. And I think there was a sort of a yearning within that period that made me think, John, I'm going to make something and be able to conduct a conversation in a drinks party or somewhere where I don't feel a complete muppet.
Now, the interesting thing is about time, in a sense, because you've had a number of years and a number of creations, if I could call it that. And there was nobody looking over your shoulder to say, Andrew, you've got to complete this, this, and this by so much amount of years. So what drives you to get it done but in a certain amount of time?
So I think I've covered in the rational side of fail fast, fail cheap. But within that, I think it's also true to say that when you've got an idea that you think might be good, and you're looking at poverty at one end and a really nice lifestyle at the other, you really fall in love with it. You really think this could be good. And like a gold digger or anything else, I'm using fairly crude examples, you can work ferociously hard. And so I remember one Christmas time, worked, other than having Christmas lunch with the family, I scuttled off the moment they sat down to watch TV. I scuttled off to get back to my prototype, which I really wanted to make work. So you do fall in love with, or you do get passionate about trying to make something work if you think there's a good commercial outcome to the whole story. And I've never found it hard to sacrifice the short term. Because again, you were just talking about employment. Most people, even if you're on a short-term contract, you've got a pretty good idea that you're working let's say, 35-hour week, and you're going to get paid at the end of that or the end of the month. I start working on something with some vague notion that if things go really, really well, I might get paid in about 2.5 to 3 years' time. Now, that level of delayed gratification is just not within the remit of most people. So you do... You do have to kind of completely rejig your thinking around, as I just implied, delayed satisfaction for something, because what you're working on is going to take a jolly long time before it's fruitful.
And you mentioned poverty on the one hand, and in a sense the opposite of that, having money in the hand. And I wonder if perhaps the avoidance of poverty is a driving force, or is there something else?
Sure. So, without getting all religious on you, I genuinely do believe that the love of money is the root of all evil. And so, if you're constantly thinking about the money, I think it drives things in an unhelpful way. So here's a case in point. The Wright brothers, who created an aeroplane, what most people don't know is that there was a government-backed Harvard University type team with a huge budget also trying to make a flying machine. And the moment the Wright brothers got there, the other team simply packed up. They didn't think, okay, these wacky guys that make bicycles have actually managed to get something to take off, but we're serious engineers. We're now going to make this much more valuable. No. They were so vain in their aspiration to be first. The moment they weren't first, they just gave up. And I think it can be like that with money. If you really work for something because you're trying to add value to the world, or provide a product and you just want it to be as good as you can be, then the money should, as long as you've got some commercial savvy to you, the money should then flow in. Whereas I think if you constantly money, I think it would really dull your creative side, because all the time you'd just be thinking about the money. And I think, I think it would completely ruin those people who actually have cut it as an inventor, because you do have to be quite childlike in order to say, I don't care how it was yesterday, I want to make it better today. And that driver has to be, again, a core element within the cake of innovation, as well as financial security. So I think if you worship financial security, don't blooming bother. And just one more point on that. I think it's only about 6% of patents have a woman as a lead inventor or sole inventor, and if I'm wrong, it's not by many percentage points. I've heard a number of reasons on that, but I think women, frankly, are just too smart, and they know how utterly rubbish the odds are, and they just don't fancy that level of failure. So they don't do it. It takes people who are 5'2", ugly, and needing to make their mark in the world to continue to pursue that kind of occupation. Because I wasn't going to cut it any other way. I might as well do something completely off the spectrum to enjoy life the way I see fit.
So that's interesting. I mean, your work and life, therefore, won't need a kind of work-life balance that other people might think about with employment?
So, if you're paid to be at a certain place and to be at the beck and call of somebody else, then me time becomes really important. But in many ways, I retired at 24 to become an inventor. And everything else, I'm responsible and beholden to those decisions that I make. So there is no me time. It is what's going to be fun today. Let's go do it. And another element with that, because obviously you do, like, most writers would say they have writer's block and blah, blah, blah. I think from a almost psychology point of view, the evidence is that as we start to relax into sleep and or come out of sleep, we go from alpha waves to beta waves. I think we're operating now at beta waves, and the dream phase is alpha waves, and it is the coming in and coming out of that phase is what can be a seriously more creative moment. And I believe people like Edison, who didn't do too badly, he was very much in for the afternoon nap and or nap whenever he felt like it, because I think he, and I would testify to the same, not everybody can pull it off, but I would testify the same. If things aren't going well, go and have a little nap, just relax your mind for a moment, and it might come back with something more fruitful. So that's certainly been my testimony. A lot of people say, well, have a shower. And in many ways, it's the same dynamic that's going on in order to help them be more creative.
So in terms of lifestyle, there is no clear separation between work and leisure?
No, none.
And how do you live this very interesting life?
It's very sweet of you to ask, Russell. You live here too. So people say, what's your plan for today? Now, at the moment, I'm selling one house, as you know, and moving, and I've got certain other litigation pressures on me right now. But pretty much, I make it up as I go along, and everything is a kind of a daily risk analysis of what am I hoping to achieve. And if I put effort in over there, is that going to backfire in some way? Or so every day is the kind of living by your wits, and particularly in the summertime, if it's a nice sunny day, well, I'll do something outside, and if I do need to do something later, I'll just simply, work later and sleep it off the next day in the sunshine. So I normally would put in, I'm probably not doing this right now, but normally during my working life, generally, I would have been putting in about a 75-hour week. But I'm breaking it up all the time. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'll do a bit more of that. I'm not stuck doing my accounts or doing the company's accounts indefinitely. That would utterly drive me crazy. It's because I can mix up my day quite, with a lot of different things that that makes the day productive, but in a very spread out sort of way.
So that's interesting because, in a sense, people in a usual employment type environment usually have a bunch of people around them to consult with, ask whether their ideas are going okay, somebody project managing what they do. And it sounds like you work very much alone. Is that right?
So there's a film called Highlander, and in the film, I can't remember, but the tagline is, "There can be only one." Now, of course, there are plenty of good innovation teams that do great work. And herein lies another kind of part of the theme that you've been teasing out here, which is how do you manage success? Because success has many fathers, whereas failure is an orphan. How do you manage success in a team? Because at the outset, you're trying to achieve something still with 700 to 1 odds against you. And in any relationship, when the environment of the relationship changes dramatically, and it should do if you're successful, then invariably the team that was functional to do one thing can become staggeringly dysfunctional at later stages. People think, I've got enough money to now go and play golf 7 days a week. Why would I want to do X? And other people would say, hey, I want to buy a yacht. Playing golf 7 days a week ain't going to cut it. So for me, I would much rather take responsibility for everything and just get on and invent it. Yes, it can be lonely. Sometimes you think, if only somebody else could share this, what feels like an enormous burden. And then you just got to give yourself a little bit of a talking to and just get on with it, because that's the choice you made. And if you can't take responsibility for the choices you make, then again, you're not going to cut it.
So there is no team to consult?
No.
It's you and your drawings or whatever sketches you make of things and working it out in your own mind?
So that's a good point. So there are other wise people around. So, for example, once I've got what I think the intellectual property of the idea, so the novel step that I think is going to make this product, I then tend to use, with confidentiality agreements, other design people and so on, to get the thing to be commercially viable. I know the commercials are there or thereabouts, but in manufacturing, if you make it slightly differently, you can improve your margin by 10-15%. So then you in effect buy in other services, another gifting from other people in order to come up with your goal. So although the innovative step and the filing of the patent and that level of work I have determined to take responsibility for, you don't get the product to market all by yourself. You do go and think they'll be good at that, and you do deals in order to take it forward. So there is some team player, and I mean, yes, I don't know what you think, but I do like people, and I do like working with people. It's just this occupation, for me, I find it's less stressful and simpler overall, just to keep working at it till you've got it right.
Now, moving to something that's even very interesting to you is, and me, is that you're a very physically fit person, and you do a lot of running. Could you tell us about the things that keep you physically active?
So what might not be quite clear to the viewers, I'm only 5'2", and about 51 kilograms. And again, I don't think it's phenomenally well thought through, but it was a decision probably 17, 18. and probably when I was thinking about whether girls were going to be a nice thing, that I thought, well, you know, I'm at a disadvantage in so many other ways. I'm very well not going to get fat and idle at the same time. So rather like Ernie Wise with Eric Morecambe, you know, I might be short, but I wasn't going to be fat with hairy legs. And so, yes, it's just been part of it. And I would say a huge benefit, because in so many ways, when you've got a set of challenges, because I've had litigation that's dragged on for 2 or 3 years, and you know, invested over more than £500,000 in that. I have had my moments of what would be considered to be quite stressful times, and I think you're able to endure it and even sort of rejoice in it if you are really physically fit, because you say to yourself, look, I've got enough self-control and enough self-discipline to do this, and this physically. I simply have to relate that back into whatever I'm doing mentally, and it just gives you that little bit of an edge and a little bit more determination. There's I'm not obviously Olympically sporty, but there is, I think, kind of an Olympic level sport expression, which is I do today what other people won't, so I can do tomorrow what other people can't. And I think if you want to live quite an extreme lifestyle in your occupation, you need to gear up the whole of your physicality and mental.
Have you got a workout
in tune to be able to deliver on that?
Do you have a workout routine?
Do
you have a workout routine?
So,
or a pattern of physical activity?
So, you are not wearing a watch at the moment, but a lot of us do. I think I'm 62 now, and I think you just get a really good inner sense for when you're doing enough and when you're really not doing enough, and that applies both physically and mentally to what you should and shouldn't be doing. So on both scores, I know perfectly well when I'm not doing quite enough physical stuff, but I don't work to a set pattern, because my life isn't that set in the first place. But I just know, and then periodically I just think, I've only got one body, there's no good in working hard if I, you know, physically can't cut it anymore. So you know, my physical side tops what I maybe should or shouldn't be doing with my head or the next email. Just say, stuff it, the next email will have to wait, because I need to keep fit now. Oh, another good trick.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm a Yorkshireman, incredibly mean. So typically, I heat where I office really badly, as in I don't heat very much at all. And then that drives you maybe 10 minutes every hour to go and take physical exercise simply to get warm. So this is ideal as far as I'm concerned. I have to work quite frenetically between the thing, and then go and get fit again, or you know, take some exercise. And the satisfaction that gives me as a student Yorkshireman, I can't tell you. It's just joy.
And what sort of exercise you do?
Well, a certain amount of running, a certain amount of muscle building, because, and of course you know this so well, Russell, and you're such a fabulous example yourself. We lose about 35% of our muscle mass from you know, somewhere in our mid-30s if we don't make a real conscious effort to rebuild. So people that have got bad shoulders and the like, no surprise that their muscles so depleted, you know, the ligaments are just, you know, they're just not holding stuff together. So again, it's a choice. I'm perfectly happy with my choice.
Yes, and what sort of range of activities you do? Running, I know you run a lot, but you're being shy, not saying how much you run.
Yeah, so I do 6K maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow.
And I think because we've become friends, you also know I got into tyre flipping. So tyre flipping, it's an 85 kilogram tyre. It's a metre one direction, about 600 centimetres, so 0.6 of a metre the other way. And so just simply by flipping it over and over, that obviously works everything, and that's fabulous exercise. And I've done that for charity purposes, which makes me train harder so I can do it in order to raise money for those good causes that I believe in. So again, it's another kind of entirely virtuous circle. And again, given that I'm an endless show-off, it ticks that box as well.
And what about your social network? Because one could easily imagine Andrew's a guy spending 75 hours a week, let's say on average, at work, and then running a whole lot and doing a whole lot of exercise. Do you have time for social things?
So take a bell chart that goes out parabola with edges. I'm a better fan of the 80-20 theory or Pareto's law, and that would say that. So, for example, 20% of crime would happen. Sorry, 80% of crime would happen at 20% of the locations and stuff like that. So, if you apply this to your social network, then of 100 people you're going to meet, you might like 20 because they're naturally quite progressive, quite forward-thinking, quite whatever you think you are. And then you're going to have, as the parabola goes up, you're going to have those people that might like you, coming around to those people that probably won't like you, coming around to the 20% of people who are definitely not going to like you. And I think because of what I do is quite extreme, and I don't mean to, I try not to be sort of judgmental, but no matter what their past track record is, you just sort of look at people's faces and how they're reacting to stuff, and you decide whether they're going to be worth it or not. And I also have a kind of, I can tell you're laughing, I also, again, I've developed a whole little philosophy around these things. I also have an expression that I believe is a good idea to be a conversation engineer, because obviously I'm kind of ad-libbing happily in front of you now. You're never going to come up with the right answer if you can't ask the right question. The right question is the driver for so much good thought. So on anybody that I might meet, you've got to ask the good questions to see if there's going to be sufficient platform to make that into a genuine friendship. But you are absolutely right. At certain times of life, I didn't have time for very many other things. It just wasn't sufficiently important. That being said, I was a church warden for a major church for 14 years, and that provided enough sort of compulsory, duty-driven communication, interaction, and policy making within a large Christian fellowship to sort of support that side of my general thinking. Because I do like people, but sometimes you're quite right, something has to give if you want to achieve another goal. So.
What are the core elements of friendship that you value for yourself?
Okay, so I mean, unlike you, I've reviewed and had to kind of rethink this quite a lot by having to look, well, not having to, by choosing to look at umpteen dating sites. So I can give you the top 5 by anybody's language, but I think trust has to be quite important, because if you can't trust somebody, then you know what.
How do you know who to trust?
Well, you just get there by some of the other strategies, I think. And I think you can certainly enjoy somebody's company and enjoy what they're good at, or enjoy something that you can share together without trusting them for a moment. So it can still be a valuable relationship, but you know that you might be giving a lot more and they're taking a lot more. And again, I don't know what the viewers think, but I would say that in this world of ours, about 20% people are natural givers, and probably 80% people are much more inclined to say, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of that? And as good friends, they wouldn't really cut it for me. I'm only interested in people that are constantly trying to invest generously through their lives in whatever it is. Those are my sort of people.
What about family life? How does that work or worked for you over the years?
Okay, we're getting into the tricky ground. So now for you, Russell already knows that I'm recently divorced. So I invested 27 years in family life, and although, like many situations, we were clearly into a more difficult patch, my marriage very dramatically then broke down with a note on the kitchen table, and my now ex-wife hasn't spoken to me since. That is very regrettable. But I think, again, kind of a businessy, sporty type expression is control the controllable. There are often things, and spectacularly within relationships, things outside your control. I might really like you. You might think I'm odd. You've just got to navigate that without, sort of, feeling terribly awkward about the whole thing. And so, though, at one level, I'm very sad the way that particular situation played out, I have a deep passion and love for people in the round, so I've done everything I can within the last 18 months to create community in other ways. Even down to homeless people coming to stay here and so on, and so on Facebook. And again, let's be clear, I'm really a show-off. Everything else is subsidiary to that. But within Facebook, I'll say to friends, I'm up for doing odd jobs, and then all sorts of random people come and ask me to do stuff. But it fills out the day, it creates community, I feel good about it, it's giving, it's all the values that are important to me. And so it's not the same as blood family at one level, but actually the people I'm helping or can become quite trusted friends, whereas obviously my trusted friendship within family has taken a bit of a kicking recently. So
it's easy to focus on the recent, but there's a whole load of years there.
Yeah.
And you do have two grown-up children, and in the back of somebody's mind, not necessarily mine, they might be wondering, well, with Andrew being so physically active, spending a whole load of time inventing stuff, meeting people, defending lawsuits, whatever, did the children have enough of you?
Oh, that's a good question. So, obviously you'd have to ask them. So, within that whole spectrum and within this is life, because I'm self-employed, and so I could always take them to school. I could always pick them up from school. So, again, when I'm in a heavy work mode, my day would start 5:30. Family probably wouldn't get up till after 7. And then, when the children were younger, and even when they weren't younger, and again, I'm going to be showing off here, one went to Cambridge and then they went to London School of Economics. Funnily enough, they had to work quite hard too, as school children. So, after tea, they went and did their homework and I went back to work. And then, we might meet again at bedtime and then life went merrily on. So I don't feel I let them down as a dad. But again, I guess you'd have to ask. I mean, they never hinted that was a problem, and Dad can't do this because again, within the structure I'm trying to explain, they were important too. And another sort of quickie would be never love anything that can't love you back. So although you need to work, or you need to do these things, and I have used love in that quite liberal way. It's really the people that you're trying to nurture, and with children. Again, another stock expression of mine would be, I'm not here to maintain children, I'm here to grow grown-ups. So whenever it came to a crunch decision over trying to encourage them to take responsibility and or develop their own lives in a mature way, you were here to grow grown-ups and successfully people that could navigate the working world with some success. So I think that's...
I think in the back of my mind, having heard all that, is a thing where a lot of people in life don't achieve as much as they ought to or would have wished to. And in a sense, it's easy for somebody to say, well, Andrew, you're very eloquent, you have a wide vocabulary, you must be a very gifted chap from birth who's very intelligent. And, well, somebody might compare themselves and say, well, that's good for him. He's got a good brain. I'm not so good. What do you think about people who are not as probably gifted as you? How should they get on? of course, I could go and answer them, but the point is...
No. I'll take the question as it's given. So, for my first part of the answer, I think I'm going to reject the premise of the question on the basis that I left school at 17 without A-levels. I did a garage management course for which I'd never wanted to refer to ever again. And so I kind of started scratch at the age of 24. So everything has been, in a sense, loads of stuff that I didn't have. So I've taken a very risky attitude to life because I didn't have the average safety net things of many other people. But so that's just sort of giving a little bit more context. But I don't know whether you know, but I know from the Today programme that white boys, more than everybody else, are underachieving, and that's got to be an issue. So the issue you raise is obviously really, really important in our society. I feel that if everybody gets up and says, okay, what have I got and who can I share it with, and genuinely tries to give value through whatever skills they can attain and whatever self-discipline that they've got to do good, then they're going to find a way of adding value, and in that way they're going to be reasonably well paid one way or another. Now, in with that mix, and over the last year, I've been dating and have focused on dating women from that were born in Africa, or I think, all of them were born in Africa. And I think one of the things that I found intriguing about that is black women, by and large, wherever you are in the globe, get the dirty end of the stick. Other words could be applied to dirty. And being with them and understanding how oppressed and how they didn't have a fair crack, that the family around them, because they were girls, it was hard then. It's been hard all the way through their relationships, and we won't go there unless you ask me a more direct question. And for them, support worker is very often as far as they're ever going to get. They just didn't have enough time in education, and some of them are bright enough to do a great deal more than that. They're just lack of opportunity. So I think there is always an opportunity gap for, but relatively tiny sectors of our society, for which I think black women have a huge representation, and everybody else, by and large, certainly, obviously, we're living in north of England here now, have a better set of possibilities to work through, if they choose to. But of course, if you choose to go to the pub and make a lot of other choices, then that's probably as far as you're going to get, because your ambition is only limited by, well, as long as I've got enough money to get well and truly drunk, other words could apply, every week, then that's good enough. Well, great, if that's good enough, that's as far as you're going to go up the hill. If you want to get to the top of the hill, you're going to have to do a bit more effort.
I think there's an interesting thing about people being born with a certain genetic inheritance, which obviously all people aren't equal in what they're born with in terms of intelligence and so on. But there's also a kind of social inheritance in the kind of family you're born into. And I was wondering whether your upbringing was a good one that put you on the right track, so to speak.
So there's probably books on this somewhere.
All I want to know is you, not the books.
But I think it is about ambition. And let's be clear, well, I certainly know people that had a good upbringing, had every access to private schooling, and just drifted through life because they lacked ambition. And people catch ambition late in life, and they sometimes catch it early. And if you catch it early, then you've probably got a PhD, and if you catch it late, then you end up being an inventor. Because you weren't bright enough to get your PhD, or you weren't in the right place at the right time to get your PhD. I'm not threatening anybody with a PhD, but I think the point is there. So it is down to ambition, and it is down to, very sadly, people believing that they can do it because they've seen somebody else do it. Now, in my case, I was so tiny in a world where everybody else was bigger, and in some ways I did feel disadvantaged. I thought, I am not going to let this world make me less than I'd like to be, and I'd like to be a lot. So I simply just made more and more choices, which would be quite extreme, in order to see if I could make something happen, and I was prepared to risk everything to try and make it happen.
So to be a bit provocative about that, your lack of genetic inheritance of height,
Sure.
for example,
Absolutely.
would have been a driver.
Absolutely.
Right. A kind of very good sort of short man syndrome, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, although that's a pejorative term in most cases.
No, it's fine.
But it seemed that drove you
So,
to be competitive.
okay, but I mean, again, going back to control the controllable, I was never going to be a basketball player.
Yes.
There's lots of things I was never going to do. So what have you got?
Yes.
How can you work it to
Yes.
your advantage? So, and again, obviously, divorce notwithstanding, I'm, as you well know, dating, I wouldn't say aggressively, but certainly assertively.
Well, assume that I know nothing, because other people who will be seeing this, you mustn't assume that they know.
No, quite.
But
Well,
don't say
anyway,
too much about things you don't need to.
This is my way
yes.
of just getting it in there.
Yes.
But I can promise you that on no dating site, and let's say for the sake of argument, I've skim read, let's say 3,000 women's. Nobody anywhere ever says I'd rather date a short guy. It just is never said. It is never said. They're hardwired to go
Yes,
for
yes.
the tallest, best looking, hopefully wealthiest guy that they can find,
Yes.
and that's that. So the only way I can combat that is to be as smart and funny and hopefully as agile as I can be, because I fully intend to stay competitive, because that's important to me.
I notice you lit up when speaking about women. And obviously it's something that is something that excites you. And what about the female mind or body or whatever you want to call it that excites you so obviously?
So, again, for the viewer, I guess, I'm now also doing, just on the side, a little bit of a counselling course. So my mind is kind of rushing through the Freud and the Jung and all these other folk. I think. Let's be clear, in the show-off side and all the rest, I think I am perfectly authentic in all these things. Are the driver somewhere has to be that desire to be loved. And in my case, I'm utterly extrovert in that. I don't shelter or hide from it at all. I know that the failure rate is going to be incredibly high, just as in my occupation. So therefore, it is a challenge. And again, without trying to be too shocking, the conversation engineer and how you flirt, so that you don't offend anybody. But are sufficiently successful often enough of the time to make it worthwhile, just like the inventing, is extraordinarily interesting. But I do always aim to add value one way or another. But no, to be with people and be pleasing, across a physical and or other way, is a huge drive for me, because relationships are important and touch is important, and so I am mindful to try and find people that like sharing that, because again, within the spectrum of everything, some people will, some people never will. You just have to find those that do. And fishing is a good example. You're going to fish, and then some you're going to, it isn't going to work out, but don't stop fishing. We should always be fishing for relationships that add colour and texture and delight into our lives, and hopefully, if you feel you are a giver, you absolutely make sure that you give as much as they do, and then it becomes a win-win, almost sort of kingdom of God type mentality, where you're actively involved in making other people's lives easier and sharing whatever they want to share with you in a phenomenally proactive, way. But that's what, as you might say, turns me on. So that kind of thing, absolutely what I'm into when I've got the time. And now, because I don't have a unit family to pour all that energy into, obviously, this is going to sound really sort of odd, but I kind of slightly got more an Andrew for everyone attitude. Anybody that wants to sort of spend time with me and sup with me, as one might say, that's good enough for me. Let's see what delight that of interest that person has, because we've almost all got something.
Yeah.
And you just build from there, and or shrug and think, that's not going to work. They don't like me, I'm too tiny, or they don't like me because I'm weird, or they don't like me because don't worry about it. Just go and find somebody else that does like you, or is prepared to do whatever it is, because they're out there. They always are.
I think it's interesting to hear your creative perspective on those things, and of course you mentioned your marriage breaking down, and you must have had friends in similar situations, and your relationships more recently, and I just wondered what you thought are the ingredients for a lasting relationship.
So again, I don't know if this is coming through something if Russell. In with this mix, I also trained and gave marriage preparation advice to, along with my now ex-wife, to about 60 couples, because I particularly for the support and benefit of children, because society is always going to have children coming into it, otherwise we are in trouble. They need a stable environment, and so on that level, good communication skills in marriage. And I'm trying not to get tearful, because obviously, things went south in such a quick way. Anyway, you're only witness, so I won't say any more on that. But it is hugely important, because there are very many dark days within any committed relationship, and the commitment is important for the upbringing of stable children. Not a guarantee, but all the data says that is helpful. For children to be nurtured and come forward into adulthood in a happy and stable way. Again, there are success stories of many other variations, but I'm just saying the data says that secure marriage relationships is a good basis. So that is important, and now, phenomenally bizarrely, but maybe not so bizarrely, I'm in regular contact with about 5 or 6 people who are becoming unmarried, and just really encouraging them to do it in a civilised and negotiated way, so that they don't spend more than half their money on lawyers.
So, in a sense, the reason why I go in this area is because people may see you only as a guy who puts things together and markets them. And things are physical objects, and relationships are not really physical objects, but you need to, in your way of exerting agency and control and nurturing and creativity and love and all those things that are not physical. How do you view management of those things? That's a big question, I imagine. Sure.
So let's look at the why of that, because again, I hope it's coming through that everything has to have a why to it. Why is sort of the nub of any circle. So you have a why, and then you have a how, and then you have a what, and I hope it's kind of coming through that the whole inventor aspect became available, because if I wanted to live better, I had to take a big risk. So in a sense, that's how I became an inventor. But the why of my life is really always to add value, and the insecurity show-off side of me meant that if I could be the sole inventor of something that became famous, boy, would that tick all the boxes. So in this sort of vast, ghastly vanity exercise of my life, those would be some of the drivers. but giving value within a sort of Christ-centered aspect of my life also would be, you know, how do you go on giving value one way or another, and if your invention comes good, then you can support your family and you can do other charitable work and if you don't, then you're just going to have to stay in your workshop till you do, because in order to have significance in that sort of way, for me, it was the love of God that gave me significance, that gave me the energy to go out and do all this other stuff. But exactly what I do, so an invention could be a way of looking at relationship that's more successful than the way somebody else is trying. You can't file a patent on it, but it's still a piece of creative thinking, a piece of articulation that helps people get it. And if they get it and can take it forward and are happier thereafter because of something that you've managed to do, then that's still in that, not in an intellectual property way, but in another way, it's still, you've still solved today's problem in the most elegant way. One solving a problem in an elegant way enables you to file a patent and you get well paid. Another solving a problem in an elegant way solves somebody's immediate problem right now, and they are happier for it, both of which are extremely valuable.
You mentioned God, and as you know, I'm an atheist.
Yes, you're so famous in atheist.
But I have a religious upbringing, so I know a lot of faiths. But religion has been a big part of your life, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it was part of the healing process when I was 14, 15, to feel that every day could be new, and that if I was created and loved by an external force, then I could be braver about the decisions I made, and I didn't have to be as crippled by the rejection that life often comes out. That's a great question, by the way, because it is very often how we handle rejection will determine the extent to which we're endlessly moving forward. So Heinz is another sort of innovator. I think he did fail 57 times. I have to go sort it up for sure. But he certainly failed a great many times before he became successful. Because, again, failure in this context isn't, as the word might imply, it's simply an acknowledgement that you need to start again, use the experience of what you just failed at, open brackets, in order to build back stronger. Gosh, I could easily be such a conservative politician. And but so it is. Anything that didn't work out the way you wanted it to is simply, from a scientific point of view, an opportunity to say, okay, that didn't work out. It might have cost me a month. It might have cost me a year. In the case of my marriage, it would cost me 27 years. But it didn't. It was a valuable contribution to experience. How am I going to use that experience in order to be better at those goals of loving and adding value than I was yesterday? Because everything can be reused or regurgitated to create more value later if you have a positive outlook. If you think, oh, I failed, oh, I'm disappointed with what I've achieved in my life, great, that's exactly where you'll stay. Don't go there. Well, if you do go there, find the door and get out of there.
Now you're 62 and in good health, and I can easily imagine you'll last another 30 years. Of course, the good Lord might decide otherwise, but subject to his gift of life. Assuming you have 30 years ahead of you, nobody maps out what's going to happen in the next 30 years. But have you any ideas what you would want to achieve?
So I never want to retire. The whole concept is an anathema, because this is life. And you just live it with as much energy as you can pour into it every day. And so that's why I want to stay fit, because going back to the I do today what other people don't concept, the mental health of people who are making poor choices about their own health there's as many as you know, grains of sand on the beach, and I'm not trying to be judgmental there, but most people know when they're not living very healthily, and I think there's always an opportunity through self-control, through a little bit of self-belief and or a feeling of calling, that can drive you on to being healthier. Hence my captivation, could be the right term, with women who are from an African background, because almost all of them have turned to food to substitute a lot of other things that have gone really, you know, sadly, badly wrong for them, time after time after time. And it's awfully hard to pick yourself up when life, you know, when you're sort of the north wind never ever stops. That's really, really tough. So, you know, part of my kind of enjoyment in being with them is trying to infuse a sense of, yeah, well, you might not be digging in the right direction, but there might be some easier earth over there. Let's go and find it, because you might find life is a lot more fun with a small tweak to attitude or outlook. And if you can get healthier at the same time, then great. And most people go along with that. But you do have to hold their hand and encourage them.
So you'll go on playing at work, in a sense,
exactly,
as long as you can.
I'm good. Russell, you're worth every penny. Yeah, I'm going to go on playing at work until the Lord takes me.
Until the Lord takes you. Is there any new challenges you want to, or have in the back of your mind that you want to do in any sphere? In any sphere?
Yeah, sure. So, I have opted for, again, arguably for my own mental health, not to work too hard commercially, because what I do, the aforementioned very high failure rate, I haven't considered this to be a very good environment to be an inventor. Even if you had a very pandemic-focused product, because of the time it takes and the cost it takes to get product to market, the whole pandemic environment might have changed in 2 years, and it typically takes you about 3 years to get a product to market. So, given the failure rate of everything else, and given that I'm quite broke at the moment, that's too much like hard work. But I do have other things kind of there and thereabouts, which the moment, you know, the sun comes out and the tractor starts working again, and I can, you know, plough another furrow into the field, I'll be getting back onto it. And yeah, there are a couple of things, but again, you have to wait for the environment to come around for those things. Again, it's part of the realistic thinking. Don't endlessly, you know, knock your head into the brick wall thinking that change of behaviour, the same behaviour is going to come within a different outcome, because Einstein correctly pointed out that that's insanity. Don't do it. But I think the environment is, hopefully, as we come through whatever this pandemic has beset us with, into an environment where innovation might be considered more favourably.
So I was just wondering whether there was something in your long and good life that you didn't achieve that you thought you might want to achieve in the next 30 years.
I think I'll try and put it this way. It hasn't been too bad this time. I remember moving around once with moving all my failed prototypes, half to the skip and half to the next place, thinking, oh, Andrew, what are you doing with your life? All these things fail. You always do. And again, resist that thought. And so, yeah, there are plenty of things that could have gone better. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe, you know, I missed a trick. Spilt milk. Move on. Yeah. Because, you know, only tomorrow, with an optimistic outlook, can you see the opportunity of tomorrow. And so this has been a phase of rebuilding relationships, rebuilding the fun of banter, the fun of enjoying being with other people. And adding value in a different way, without being too workshop focused. But if that's my primary gifting, then, you know, maybe I should get back there a little bit, be a bit more self-control around that, and just say, okay, you know, I need to be more aggressively looking at there are certain things that you've got to look at within the wider commercial environment in order to try and pick out your next idea, just like picking horses through good breeding or things like that. And I need to be a bit more research focused in order to see what the next idea might be and get back to it.
Yes. What's been one of the happiest moments in your life?
Gosh. I wouldn't like to define it. I think every day...
Fulfilling then?
No, I think every day is a joy. I think,
Right.
you know, talking to you now
Right.
is, don't get overrated here, but it's joyful. I think every opportunity lends itself for a moment of joy. I think, you know, being accepted by the next girl that likes you is a joy. It's a complete, utter vanity exercise. It's sort of helping somebody realise that the mistake they made yesterday, they don't need to make it again tomorrow. Whether you like the person or not, is still an absolute joy. So, funnily enough, even when, you know, my invention starts to come through and you get your first royalty check and you know, you've got your 20th store in one of my cases, you think this is now going to be a stable. I am now going to be able to plan for a much more financial future. I never ever bother with champagne because my life is what's next. Whatever it is, okay, you've done that. That's fine. What's next?
So you don't go touring the world and loads of money and
I
celebrating.
don't, because whatever it is, within my sort of calling and purpose view of the world is, okay, this now is, I can push this on to the next stage. What's next? And it isn't about self-indulgence. It's about, you know, now I can afford this for the greater good and or for the greater good. But I live relatively simply, and just in more recent times, have purposefully lived in a quite Spartan fashion, in order to make sure that I do have that self-discipline, self-control, that I'm not looking for a car that I can't afford or anything else. Because if you start worshipping material things, that is such a cruel master or mistress. You'll never get there. You know, there's always going to be a better Rolls Royce or Bentley.
Yes.
Don't bother.
Yeah.
Just, you know, go for the relationships, for the joy of sharing what you have, because that's where I think real joy can be found, not in material.
Great. So we've been going for roughly an hour. I don't know if you realize that. My arm is going a bit dead, but I thought before we stop, maybe you can share with us one of your funniest moments ever.
I'm not good at remembering these, am I?
Something where you rolled around laughing.
I'm going to struggle again on that. I'm so sorry. I mean,
It's a googly.
I think you think I am relatively fun in the scheme of things.
All of us had a moment where we were rolling in stitches.
I know, but very it's sort of a realisation that we both know the same thing about a situation, and we have that kind of aha moment. We're not completely crazy ourselves. You and I have convinced ourselves that everybody else in this case is crazy, and I think that again, I think mental health is so important. And laughter is important. And of course, I'm constantly trying to be funny because that makes you more lovable. And as there's an expression in Latin that, you know, if you want to be loved, be lovable. And I think I am focused on that.
Do you make people laugh?
But yeah, I do try and think of the, you know, the wittier way of saying anything, as long as it's not too cruel. Because again, I think it's just a way of bringing joy. I think there's some really good jokes, but it's just another joke, really.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure talking, Andrew.
You've been really lovely, thank you.
Thanks very much for sharing some very personal thoughts, feelings, your experience, your achievements, how you live life. And the things that you're going to be doing next, things like counselling and so on. You know, it's been brilliant to learn from you. Really, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Russell. It's been wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.